Flatliners. The original Flatliners came out in 1990 and it starred Kiefer Sutherland, Kevin Bacon, Oliver Pratt, Julia Roberts, and a bunch of other actors that are pretty well known today. I watched this in anticipation of watching the newer film that came out this year. I have seen it before, but it's been years and years, so I watched it again. I don't know how I feel about it. It's about a bunch of doctors and scientists that start conducting a test to see what's going on in the afterlife. What happens after we die? And to do that, they stop each other's hearts for a few short minutes before bringing them back to life, and they document this with a video camera. Now, I could talk about the newer film because I just saw that a few minutes ago, but the newer film made more sense when it came down to documenting scientific medical cases. What are you gonna do with a video camera? You're shooting a person dead on a slab. When they come back, they come back. How is that accurate documentation? It makes no sense. Let's ignore that. The concept of Flatliners makes a lot of sense to me, and it's actually a really cool concept. Not only just dying and seeing what's beyond and everything, but making a case for it, which means you have to risk the chance that you're gonna die on the table in order to get those results. First up is the people category, and we're talking about acting. Does the acting impress? No, it's a horror, it's a drama, and look at both of those genres. The horror sticks out specifically for the acting because when you look at dramas, you usually have somewhat good acting, usually. And in this one, it's just kind of a weird movie that focuses more on their idea of horror, even though it's not that scary. So acting only gets 1 out of 2 possible stars. Characters. Well, I can say this. They tried with the characters, and they are diverse characters, but they aren't memorable characters. When you look back and you're thinking about Flatliners, you're thinking more about the plot of it, the concept of it, but you're not thinking about who's in it other than maybe, hey, that's that Kiefer Sutherland movie. You forget the fact that Kevin Bacon's in there, that Julia Roberts is in there. You forget about them, and you're like, that's that Kiefer Sutherland movie where he says, today is a good day to die. Character gets 1 out of 2 possible stars. How about the casting? Like I said, this movie starred a ton of actors that I didn't even remember was in it, which is really cool because I don't know what it is about their characters. Even though I don't really care about them while I'm watching, I think the actors did a pretty good job of portraying what's going on in their lives in order for them to want to be part of this experiment. Casting gets 2 out of 2 possible stars. Importance. Everybody in the film plays a different but equal part in adding to the plot. All of these different doctors and scientists, they all have their own expertise in certain fields, which ultimately helps whoever is going under to come back out and live, because everybody here is a genius, but only one person can't save lives. They need a whole group of people using their abilities to do the improbable. I would say with importance, 2 out of 2 possible stars. Chemistry. I don't think that chemistry is a big part of the film. I think it's more about the depth of the idea and the concept of death and what happens when you cross lines you shouldn't than chemistry. I don't really sense anything, even though there is some romantic chemistry here and there. I don't really feel it. 1 out of 2 possible stars for that. Writing category. The dialogue in it. Most people will remember, today is a good day to die. They will remember that, but they will not remember anything else in the movie because there's a lot of cheesy lines. Makes it almost feel like these actors are doing a bad job. While I'd like to give it full points for Today is a Good Day to Die, I have to give it half points because a lot of it is cheesy and blah. So 1 out of 2 possible stars for that. Is it a balanced film? No. There is no real central focus in the film, other than the fact that each person ultimately goes under to experience life after death and is brought back and has experiences afterwards, and what that means for each individual character is different. In that regard, it's almost like a ton of little mini movies all weaved into one. The movie feels a lot longer than it probably should. Balance gets 0. How about the story? The thing about the story that I like here is mostly the concept alone. It ponders the question of what's going on after death, and not only that, but It's about a scientific discovery that once again shoves the course of science and medical discoveries forward. That part's cool. The way it's not a huge focus in the film. I think it should have been. However, that's not the case here. When you have a story focusing mostly on scary things, you don't really have a deep, meaningful story. And that's okay. It's just that they had the footing there, but they didn't really do anything with it. 1 out of 2 possible stars for that. Originality. I consider this pretty original. I don't think I've ever seen anything like it before. Yes, you have out-of-body experience films and things of the nature. Nothing like this. 2 out of 2 possible stars. Interesting. I think I probably said it a few times already in the review. Yes, it's definitely an interesting concept. Even though it's a 1990 movie that kind of feels blah while watching it a little bit, it's dealt with pretty interestingly in the movie, and for the most part, I don't really consider it predictable either. So as far as that goes, interesting gets 2 out of 2 possible stars. Behind the scenes. BTS. With the visuals, there are some pretty average sequences, and there's some that don't look the greatest. The one thing that definitely helps in the case of the 1990 Flatliners movie is that they don't try their hands at CGI or graphical effects of any kind. They knew their strengths and their weaknesses, and they played to their strengths. As far as visuals goes, I will say 1 out of 2 possible stars just because it mostly just felt average. Directing, I don't know what to tell you here. Mostly a normal directing job. They did a fine job when it came down to focusing on all of these different characters and explaining why they are here and what they mean to the story. But other than that, I can't really say much for the director. 1 out of 2 possible stars. Same mostly goes for editing. I didn't really see anything specifically that felt great. There are normal scenes, and then there's flashback scenes, dream sequences, heavenly sequences, all of which just feel like typical normal editing jobs. 1 out of 2 possible stars. I do consider it as advertised. I didn't see any false advertisement. It looks like a weird 90s horror film, and it feels like that too. 2 out of 2 possible stars. As for music, nothing fancy here, guys. Basic music, basic score to make the theme of the film feel normal. 1 out of 2 possible stars. The narrative arc score. First you have the introduction, which of course goes over and explains to you who Kiefer Sutherland is, who Julia Roberts is, Oliver Pratt, Kevin Bacon, and all of the main players there. 2 out of 2 possible stars for that. The inciting incident is clearly when the first person goes under and dies for the first time. It is thrilling, and you don't know if they'll be able to come back because these people may not be enough to bring somebody back. 2 out of 2 possible stars. The obstacles, of course, comes down to all of the characters all around trying to go under and die to have their own experiences after death. Ultimately, what that does to their life once they are brought back. 2 out of 2 possible stars. The climax is the culmination of things, and when they figure out how to deal with the obstacles they were just given throughout the film. 2 out of 2 possible stars. Falling action, I mostly have to say, kind of just ends right there. There is no real calming down moment. It's just the big explosion at the end, and then it ends. 0. Entertainment score. Do I consider this a rewatchable film? Yes and no. This was a rewatch, but to be fair, this movie came out in 1990. I know I saw it a few years after that, because I was a kid when I saw it, but I haven't seen it since until now. So take that for instance. 1 out of 2 possible stars. Did I have a fun time while watching it? Here and there, I'll say, but the movie does feel blah a lot of the time, so I kind of have to only give that half points. 1 out of 2 possible stars. Do I have an impulse to buy it or own it? Can't say that I do. 0. Do I have an impulse to talk about it? Yeah, I don't think I'll be running to anybody saying you gotta see this movie, but if they have seen it, there are things that I would like to talk about. Other than that, it's fine. 1 out of 2 possible stars. Does it suck me in? I'd say it sucks me in every single time they are put under. None of the scary moments really hit me very well. None of the things where they're figuring out what to do got my attention very well. I will say 1 out of 2 possible stars for that. Specialty. Flatliners is a horror film drama. I would like to know about the concept of afterlife, how the actors did specifically, and I mean more like Kiefer Sutherland on that role. And if it's halfway decent. As a horror film, I didn't really sense much horror. I understand that there are horror adjacent things going on in the movie, but it barely creeped me out. For that, I'll have to give it 5 out of 10 possible stars. Was it a dramatic film? Honestly, I think it was probably more dramatic than it was horror. None of the acting really felt like drama, but you have to admit a lot of what's going on in these people's lives that comes down to why they're doing what they're doing has to do with something dramatic. 10 out of 10 possible stars. How about the concept of life after death? I think this is one of the more unique films that deals with the concept. Obviously, you've seen it a ton of times in other movies, but this one really stands out for one of the better films that deals with the concept specifically. 10 out of 10 possible stars there. Kiefer Sutherland. I'm not a huge fan of Kiefer's earlier works with film. A lot of his stuff doesn't really stand out, even though he does a good job with them. For the most part, the same applies here. I remembered that he was in it, but that's pretty much all I remembered. He's okay again, but there's nothing in it that makes him stand out as great or anything. I think he was just okay. 5 out of 10 possible stars for that. Is it halfway decent? For its generation, it is definitely halfway decent. I don't know if anybody watching today will really appreciate some of the things that stood out in 1990 versus 2017. I'll at least give it that and say it's halfway decent from that standpoint. 10 out of 10 possible stars. If we add all that up, we get 71 out of 100 possible stars, 71% overall. Tell me what you guys thought of the original Flatliners film. Tomorrow I'll be reviewing this year's Flatliners, so look out for that. As always, follow me on Twitter and tracked.tv at username IAMDWG, that's IAMDWG. And for YouTube, subscribe to me, hit that like button, and hit that bell to be notified when I come out with my newest movie review, which of course would be 2017's Flatliners. See you guys then. Peace out.